When people say Donald Trump wants to be a dictator, people like Donald Trump, who has publicly said that he wants to be a dictator on day one of his upcoming administration, they're talking about stuff like this. From an article on ProPublica by Molly Redden, dated November 26, 2024, headline, How Trump Plans to Seize the Power of the Purse from Congress. Donald Trump is entering his second term with vows to cut a vast array of government services and a radical plan to do so. Rather than relying on his party's control of Congress to trim the budget, Trump and his advisors intend to test an obscure legal theory holding that presidents have sweeping power to withhold funding from programs they dislike. He loves his obscure legal theories, doesn't he? His attempts to steal the 2020 election, which he lost, his supposed constitutional basis for telling Mike Pence to just not certify the Electoral College that year, his justification for stealing all those classified government documents at the end of his first term, all based on fringe legal theories. Maybe if you can't find any mainstream established legal theories to validate what you're doing, that's a sign you shouldn't be doing it. Continuing from the article, his plan, known as Impoundment, threatens to provoke a major clash over the limits of the president's control over the budget. The Constitution gives Congress the sole authority to appropriate the federal budget, while the role of the executive branch is to dole out the money effectively. But Trump and his advisors are asserting that a president can unilaterally ignore Congress's spending decisions and impound funds if he opposes them or deems them wasteful. The big difference between impoundment and previous fringe legal theories that Trump has embraced is that impoundment actually has considerable historical precedent. Presidents since Thomas Jefferson, at least, have declared that they weren't going to spend money that had been appropriated by Congress. And while it was never without controversy, it was something that, practically speaking, for most of American history, a president could do. The problem for Trump isn't most of American history, but recent history. Impoundment of the kind Trump has declared he wants to do has been illegal since 1974, when Congress got tired of Richard Nixon's shit and passed a law requiring the president to spend money appropriated by Congress, with a few very specific exceptions. Trump and his hench geeks Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy claim that this is all about cutting wasteful spending and making government more efficient. That's why they want to assert this presidential power of impoundment. We just want to make government work better and cost less. But Trump's own statements and the record of his first term as president tell another story. Continuing from the ProPublica article, Trump and his aides have been telegraphing his plans for a hostile takeover of the budgeting process for a few months. Trump has decried the 1974 law as not a very good act in his campaign video and said, bringing back impoundment will give us a crucial tool with which to obliterate the deep state. Though he might insist otherwise, obliterating the deep state is code for Trump getting rid of people and agencies he doesn't like, not Trump making government more transparent and efficient. During his first administration, Trump attempted to practice impoundment when he delayed congressionally appropriated spending in ways that I think gave away the true intentions behind this particular attempted power grab. Continuing now from the ProPublica article once again, the prospect of Trump seizing vast control over federal spending is not merely about reducing the size of the federal government, a long-standing conservative goal. It's also fueling new fears about his promises of vengeance. During his first term, Trump held up nearly $400 million in military aid to Ukraine while he pressured President Volodymyr Zelensky to open a corruption investigation into Joe Biden and his family. The U.S. Government Accountability Office later ruled his actions violated the Impoundment Control Act. And as this article also mentions, that refusal to send that $400 million in aid to Ukraine was part of an article of Trump's impeachment. Oh, his first impeachment, I should say, just to clarify, because he was impeached twice. He also withheld funds in ways that wouldn't necessarily qualify as impoundment, but still testify to his general attitude toward federal spending. Continuing from the ProPublica article, after devastating wildfires in California and Washington, Trump delayed or refused to sign disaster declarations that would have unlocked federal relief aid because neither state had voted for him. He targeted so-called sanctuary cities by conditioning federal grants on local law enforcement's willingness to cooperate with mass deportation efforts. The Biden administration eventually withdrew the policy. This Biden guy sounds like a way better person to be in charge of the federal government than Trump. Too bad he can't keep being president. Or maybe have his vice president take over for him. Trump and his allies claim that he wants to impound congressionally appropriated funds to shrink the federal government, to cut down on federal spending and save the government money. If Congress appropriates funds but the president refuses to spend them, presumably that means the government doesn't have to borrow money to cover those expenditures, because what we're talking about here, this is all deficit spending at this point. And when the government engages in deficit spending, meaning that it spends more than the amount of revenue that it takes in, it borrows the money for that spending through issuing bonds and other methods. And if the appropriated money isn't spent, then it doesn't have to be borrowed and it isn't added to the deficit. I guess. I'm not an expert on this, and if I'm wrong about anything I've just said, and one of you watching this knows better, please feel free, leave a comment and correct me on this. But if I'm right about that, or at least if I'm not way wrong about it, and that's generally how this works, then in theory, I suppose impoundment practiced on a massive scale could put a dent in the deficit and save the government money. The thing is, that's not how Trump has used it or tried to use it in the past, and that's probably not how he's going to try to use it this time around either. The money he and his allies indicate he wants to impound is going to be for stuff like foreign aid or welfare programs, public assistance programs, public health funding, federal funding of education, things which get a lot of negative attention from right-wing anti-government dipshits and play well with Trump's shitty voters, but which aren't where most federal spending is actually directed. Is Trump going to use impoundment to block military spending? Something tells me he's not. This isn't about saving the government money any more than hang Mike Pence was an instruction for what to do with the official vice presidential portrait. This is about Trump usurping the constitutionally delegated power of the purse from Congress, claiming it for himself, and using it to punish his enemies and illegally carry out his extremist agenda. And I'd say, if Congress lets him get away with it, they deserve to lose their constitutional powers. But if that happens, it's not the members of Congress who are going to suffer. It's the rest of us.